Hey fellow explorers, a question that I often get is, Chris, which city should I visit for my first trip to Asia? Should I visit Tokyo or should I visit Singapore? And so in this video, we're gonna be contrasting and comparing these two amazing Asian metropolises in 14 different areas. Everything from the size, the vibe, how it is to get in, how it is to get around, what the hotels are like, what the food is like, what the weather is like, so you can make the decision whether you should visit Tokyo or Asia for your first time, or maybe which one you want to visit again. All right, so let's get right into it with number one comparison area, talking about the size and the scale. And first, we're gonna start with Tokyo. Tokyo, I often like to call the endless city. Tokyo is huge, and it seems like it doesn't matter which direction you go in, the city just continues on and on and on. In 2024, the metropolitan area of Tokyo, which is the most populous metropolitan area on Earth, had 41 million residents in the metropolitan area. Now, this population is spread across a pretty vast area, and so it feels a lot less like a single city and more like a constellation of a bunch of cities that are kind of pushed together, each with their own distinct character and center of gravity. The city area of Tokyo is about 2,000 square kilometers, or about 800 square miles. The size of the Tokyo metro area is 13,000 square kilometers, or about 5,000 square miles. Okay, so now let's talk about how big is Singapore. Singapore, in contrast, is a lot more compact and a lot smaller than the Tokyo metropolitan region. Singapore has a total population of 6 million, and whether you consider it the city or the metropolitan region, they're both the same. Singapore is a city-state, so it is the country, it is the city, both together. Tokyo is the capital of Japan, and so there's a whole lot of Japan around Tokyo, but there's not a whole lot of Singapore around Singapore other than Singapore. Therefore, because it's pretty small, the entire nation and city seem like a pretty cohesive single urban environment. The total land area of Singapore is 284 square miles, or about 700 square kilometers. So significantly smaller than even just the city part of Tokyo. If you're going to Tokyo, it's definitely going to be much more like a hub and spoke approach to travel. Like, it's even worthwhile in Tokyo to switch to different hotels. In Singapore, not really an issue. You can pick one place and traverse the entire place from pretty much one central base. I would say Singapore ends up feeling much less overwhelming and much more easy and stress-free than Tokyo can. And so, by the way, if we just look at this on a map as to maybe how we might compare these things, this is Singapore overlaid on Tokyo, and obviously this map could go much bigger, but like Tokyo Disney is like over here in Chiba. Yes, and I think it's also one where, like, when people go to these places, people look at Tokyo and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many different things to do. How do I decide what to do? Singapore, much smaller, much more manageable, much more compact, and so it's much more straightforward to decide what to do in Singapore. Derek on the live stream says, I always swap hotels in Tokyo. On our last trip to Tokyo, we did 2 different hotels in Tokyo. So three different hotels in Tokyo. One in Ueno, one at Tokyo Disney Sea, and then a third one in the Toranomon Hills neighborhood. When we go to Singapore, we always just stay one hotel in Singapore. Okay. The second area to compare and contrast Tokyo and Singapore is on the urban vibe, just what it feels like to be in these two different cities. And so we'll start with Tokyo. Tokyo, I really would kind of call like organized chaos. I mean, Tokyo is this city of like beautiful contradictions. You have these big urban environments like this that have so many people and so many cars, but it all just kind of seems to work together somehow. Very high energy, I would say, in places like Shibuya, the Shibuya Scramble Crossing, where thousands of people cross this intersection every few minutes in every which direction. But interspersed amongst these busy metropolitan areas in Tokyo, there is a lot of peace and greenery and serenity. There are a lot of temples, there's a lot of bamboo forests in the city, and so you can absolutely get away from the hustle and bustle. And Tokyo, I know I'm not comparing it against Rome, but I'm going to make a comparison to Rome. If you go to like a lot of European capitals, they are noisy, they are smelly, there's a lot of horns honking, and you go to Tokyo and it's actually, for so many people, quite quiet and quite peaceful, if you can just get past the fact that there are so many absolute people. But Tokyo, like Singapore, they're both very clean places, but they're clean for different reasons that we're going to get into as we dive in further. So, then what is the vibe like in Singapore? Singapore is often described as the city in a garden, and where Tokyo just kind of seems like a very haphazard set of things that kind of all were tossed together and just work in the metropolis, Singapore is one of meticulous design. Everything is planned out. Marina Bay, the Marina Bay Sands, the Merlion, the tall buildings, the grand avenues. For many first-time visitors to Asia, they find Singapore to be well-organized and spotless and clean, which is very different than how many people perceive big Asian capitals. And I know I'm not comparing this to, just Bangkok's not in here, but if you compare it to Bangkok, Bangkok definitely doesn't have a lot of these clean elements that Singapore does. Singapore feels very futuristic. You have these places like Gardens by the Bay that have these gigantic man-made metal trees and lights. So in comparing these two together now, in Tokyo, a tourist in Tokyo may feel like they're in a participant in a respectful society, where a visitor to Singapore might feel like a guest in a perfectly managed system. And sometimes people say that they find Singapore to be too clean and too organized and too much like maybe home that they came from, that they just feel like they're in a gigantic office park, and that when they go to Asia, they're actually looking for a little bit more grit and narrow alleys and disorganization. So to each their own. Kathy, who I met a couple weeks ago at Disneyland, asked me where the koala is. The curious princess grabbed the koala when I brought it in the house, so I have yet to been able to put the koala in its place. But Kathy, the koala will be here soon. P. Nguyen says Tokyo is still rocking the feudal land plots. Indeed it is. Painkiller says I just joined, but I think Tokyo is better. It's easier to get to from LA, and it's only humid during the summer. We will absolutely talk about getting in and the weather. Derek says, I love the organization in Singapore. It just works. I love the organization too. Okay. The third area that I want to contrast and compare Tokyo versus Singapore is in the climate and when to go. So Painkiller just brought it up, but the weather is very different in these two places. And so if we start with Tokyo, Tokyo is a destination for every season. All 4 seasons are had in Tokyo. And this is not a picture of Tokyo. This is a picture of Mount Fuji, but I took this picture because Mount Fuji had snow on top of it, and you can see Mount Fuji from Tokyo. So there we go. But Tokyo has 4 distinct seasons. And you know what 4 seasons there are in the world, so I'm not going to rattle all 4 off on you, but I'll tell you what you might see in Tokyo in these different seasons. So spring, from March to May, is famous for the cherry blossoms. That's probably the most popular time to go to Tokyo. And during cherry blossom season, they have a lot of great festivals and what they call a lot of hanami, or parties or festivals that go around the cherry blossoms. You'll find a lot of large crowds and expensive flights, expensive hotels if you go in the springtime. Summertime is Tokyo's hot, humid, and wet season. The rainy season in Tokyo is from mid-June to late July, which also comes with intense heat and humidity. We were just there in August, and let me tell you, it was really hot, like 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius, 2,000% humidity, warm. But the good news, all pretty well air-conditioned in Tokyo. In autumn, or September to November, many people consider this the second best time to visit Tokyo. Brings comfortable temperatures, clear sunny skies, and fall foliage with the changing of the leaves. And finally, winter in Tokyo is cold, but generally not freezing. Temperatures range from 2 to 10 degrees Celsius or 36 to 50 Fahrenheit. The skies are often clear and sunny, which makes it a pretty good time to go and enjoy the city's indoor attractions. Also, the cheapest price is in the winter going to Tokyo. Now, let's talk about Singapore. Singapore really has 2 seasons, but the temperature is pretty much the same all around the year. By the way, the 2 seasons are, some people joke and say the 2 seasons are hot and hotter, but there's a rainy and there's a dry season in Singapore, but hot and humid all year round and abundant rainfall. What do I mean by hot and humid? Daytime highs that are typically, 32 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity rarely drops below 80%. I mean, it's really wet and sticky in Singapore. Related to hot and sticky and wet, it rains a lot in Singapore, but if you want to go okay, what's the dry season in Singapore? Statistically speaking, if you go between March to August, that is the least amount of rainfall. And then the monsoon season is usually between November to January, which brings more rain. And they're typically intense fronts of rain rather than just a little bit of drizzle. Tokyo tends to have a lot more drizzle throughout the day, where Singapore has just much more you're not going to want to be in that rain when it rains in Singapore. But wherever you are in Singapore, you're just going to be sweating most of the time. In the chat, Alex says, random question, have you stayed at a Waldorf Astoria? I have. They are expensive, but it depends how expensive it is. I've stayed at a couple Waldorf Astorias. I enjoy the one in Las Vegas on the Strip. Okay. Shan says it is quite humid. It is so humid in Singapore that when I go out of the hotel with my camera, and I take off the lens cap, it fogs up immediately because of the humidity difference between inside the hotel and outside. I have to let my camera gear acclimatize to the humid weather. Okay. Derek says, I was bracing myself for crazy heat and massive amounts of rain in Singapore, but it was not as bad as I thought it would be. When I went in June for 7 days, I literally only rained at night. Well, that sounds like a very good trip. Okay. Okay, let's go to our next area. Let's talk about getting in and getting around. First, we're going to start with getting in, how it's different to get in to Tokyo versus getting in to Singapore. And we'll start with Tokyo. Tokyo has 2 major airports that it's served by. It is served by Tokyo Narita Airport and Tokyo Haneda Airport. Tokyo Narita Airport, people would often consider as the primary international airport in Tokyo. It is located approximately 60 kilometers outside of central Tokyo. It has 2 great train options that'll bring you into the city: the Narita Express that takes you into Tokyo Station, and the Keisei Skyliner that takes you into Ueno Station. About an hour train ride is what you expect from Tokyo Narita into the city. Tokyo Haneda is much closer to the city, but often doesn't have as many flights that go to it as Tokyo Narita does. My preference, if I can, is to fly into Haneda. It's about a 30-minute taxi ride from Haneda to many of the hotels in the southern part of Tokyo. Now, talking about Singapore. In Singapore, the airport there, while the airports in Japan are good, the one in Singapore is better. And how could that be? Well, the airport in Singapore, Changi Airport in Singapore, has been voted the world's best airport years and years running. It is often known as the jewel of aviation. And honestly, this airport in Singapore is a destination in its own right. The last trip I took to Singapore, I literally spent a day out of my trip in the airport. And so this part of the airport is called the Jewel, and this is the shopping mall inside the airport. It has you see there's a little train that goes through it. This has one of the world's largest indoor waterfall. I think it is the world's largest indoor waterfall, in fact. So Singapore really is worthwhile just to go visit the airport. Okay, now getting in from the airport in Singapore, So we talked about getting in from Tokyo. Let's talk about getting in. Okay, so that was 4 and 5 combined together, airports and then getting into the city from the airports. Airports in Tokyo are good. Airport in Singapore is better, and I think getting into the city from Singapore is easier. Also, there was a comment before about easier to get to. For most people in most places of the world, Tokyo is a much easier place to get to, as there are more flights generally that go direct to Tokyo from other far-flung countries than there are to Singapore. Singapore is absolutely a great transit hub, but particularly coming from the USA, you know, you're only going to find flights to Singapore from a few airports, but you'll find flights to Tokyo from way more airports than you will to Singapore. Okay. The sixth thing to compare about is getting around once you're in the city. And so once you are in the city, then getting around in Tokyo looks kind of like this. This is the Tokyo Metro map. And it's like a matrix. There are so many different lines and so many different options in Tokyo. Many people are overwhelmed before they even get there. And then they get there and they're overwhelmed too. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Like, you could absolutely like limit yourself to just a few parts of this network, particularly if you're a first-time visitor, which what I recommend to most people is to just focus on one line. There's this one line in Tokyo called the JR Yamanote Loop Line. The trains have a green color emblazoned on them, and it's a loop line, and it just kind of takes you around a circle. Singapore's public transit system is simple and efficient. This is Singapore's public transit system. As you can see, it is a much more simple system than the system in Tokyo, but it's a smaller place, so you can get around just as well by the Singapore MRT. It goes everywhere you need to go, and I would say it's even like more tourist friendly. Like, it's tourist friendly in Japan, but it's even more tourist friendly in Singapore. Payment is exceptionally friendly because you can tap in and tap out with your credit card. You don't need to get a Oyster card or anything like that. Oyster card, Suica card. The seventh area to compare Tokyo and Singapore is in the walkability. So starting with the walkability in Tokyo, Tokyo is really a mosaic of connected hubs. I mentioned it's like a lot of cities that all feel like they're connected together, and so there's a lot of these city centers that you can totally walk in between them. It seems like you could pick one direction and walk for 10 hours and still be in an urban part of Tokyo. Tokyo is often cited as one of the world's most walkable cities. Now, you probably, like, if you're going between, like, you know, the Tokyo Station area, which is the main, like, there's two main metropolitan parts. Well, there's a lot of metropolitan parts of Tokyo, but often two main city center parts, the part around Tokyo Station and the part around Shinjuku. And those are the two busiest train stations in Tokyo. You would never walk between the two of them. You would take the train between the two of them. But then when you get to where you're going, they are infinitely walkable. And there's many parts of Tokyo that they turn into like pedestrian areas on the weekends. Ginza is a really popular shopping district that the streets, they make pedestrian only on the weekends. Really, I think you'll find Japan to be a pedestrian paradise. If you like walking, you will love Japan. By the way, what am I drinking today? Today, I am drinking a Japanese green tea by Paka. And the reason why I picked this to drink today is this is a Japanese green tea made in Singapore. So it is a Singaporean brand of Japanese green tea, which I thought was appropriate for a video talking about Tokyo versus Singapore. Okay, so if we can contrast getting around walking in Singapore compared to Tokyo, I would describe Singapore as also like really great place to walk, really great sidewalks. It is just a climate challenged walker's paradise. You will look at it and you'll look at these sidewalks and you will say like, I'm gonna totally do that walk. It's only 15 minutes away. And 5 minutes into it, you're like, oh, I regret this walk, at least if you're going outside. And so the thing that you start to figure out as you are walking in Singapore is you're like, why aren't there so many people walking on the street? Oh, because they've all found some underground passageway to get around. And so it's like, last time I was in Singapore and I was staying at the JW Marriott and I wanted to walk to the Merlion, I was like, okay, well, I know, I can see from my room, I could see the Merlion. But I'm like, I know there's another way to get there. And so I asked the hotel front desk, I'm like, how do you get to the Merlion through like the underground tunnels? And they're like, oh, you go down here and you go through here and you go here and you cross this tunnel and this and that. And then you just pop up like 1 block away from the Merlion. And so that's the thing you really need to do in Singapore, is pay attention to a lot of these underground complexes so that you can just get out of the heat. Because if you're walking really more than 15 minutes in the heat in Singapore, you'll need to find air conditioning to cool down again. Thank you for your support, West Coast Toys and Gaming. I appreciate it. Bert Morrow says, green tea. What about the caffeine? What about the caffeine? Bert, what about the caffeine? John says, what about biking in Singapore? I see a lot of people ride bikes around like the Marina Bay Sands area. I don't know how many people ride their bikes to commute in Singapore. Japan definitely has a lot of bikes, but not so much in Tokyo. Like, Tokyo's not really a great place to ride your bike because there just aren't that many like bike paths in Tokyo. Sean says, does Google Maps show the underground tunnels? Not well. Like, it generally wouldn't, Google Maps generally wouldn't give you the route in the underground tunnels. So you'll have to figure it out, kind of ask around or look at the maps on the metro or things like that to be like, oh, okay, I can see these things. Okay. The 8th area to compare Tokyo and Singapore is on language and communication. And so starting with Tokyo, well, let me back up. And I'll say that, like, this is definitely one of the areas where people like, Chris, I'm not sure about going to Japan. I'm not sure that I'm going to understand it, or even going to Asia in general. Not sure I'm going to understand how they speak and how they write things over there. And so in Tokyo, English is prominent in Tokyo because there are a lot of visitors, a lot of international visitors to Tokyo. But the English kind of often looks like this. This is a cafe that we ate at on our last trip, Doraemon F's Kitchen, this cartoon character. And you can see on the menu, there's like a lot of Japanese, but there's a lot of English too. It's kind of like Japanglish. And so you can look at enough things and be like, oh, this one's recommended and this one's this. And there's not enough English for everything. Like, not everything's in English. And so I would say it is important going to Tokyo to learn the art of nonverbal communication and be willing to point to a few things. I mean, I was I was even at a Japanese restaurant this past weekend where we live here in Orange County in Costa Mesa, and it was a legit Japanese restaurant, let me tell you. And when I'm ordering at this Japanese restaurant, for the waitresses, when I order the shoyu ramen or the chashu rice bowl, I need to point on the menu for them so that they know what I'm talking about. Oh, okay, good. And it's not that the Japanese don't know English or don't learn English. They all learn English in school. They just don't have a lot of opportunities to practice it. So it's often not perfect, or they kind of hesitate speaking it. But generally, in the touristy areas in Tokyo, you will be absolutely okay not speaking Japanese. What about Singapore? In Singapore, the English is like widely spoken in Singapore. You will not have any trouble being understood speaking English in Singapore, and you will not have trouble understanding most people in Singapore. Chris, what do you mean most people? I'll show you in just a moment. But Japan has one official language. It's Japanese. Singapore has 4 official languages. They have English, they have Mandarin Chinese, they have Tamil, and they have Malay as the official languages of Singapore. But the English that they speak in Singapore is often referred to as Singlish. Okay, so I said there's Japanglish in Japan, but Singlish, what the difference? Japanglish is just kind of like a style of English that's spoken in Japan, but in Singlish in Singapore, it's adding a lot of Chinese words into the English phrases and then like combining it with all these different things. So these are, a bunch of like the Singlish kind of things that you would start to hear in Singapore. All right, but they're actually kind of proud of their Singlish. So this is one where like they'll be speaking English, but then they'll use these words that you're like, I don't know any of those words. But if you've been to Singapore, and I see Alyssa right here says Singlish, you'll be like, oh, I've totally heard some of those things. Painkiller says, in terms of English Tokyo, you never know when you might bump into someone who actually speaks English conversationally. Sometimes locals might approach you in English. Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say there's a large percentage of Tokyo that does, but of course, like people like the taxi drivers, for example, don't. So the interacting with the taxi driver is you need to have your destination in Japanese, or you need to be pretty proficient with the Google Translate app to speak with them. So it's me, Laura says, I think it would be so interesting with technology nowadays, in particular the new AirPods iOS update. Yeah, I will say, like, Google Translate is one that I will use a lot of times in Japan. I'll speak into it, it'll translate into Japanese, and they can do the same thing to go back. Okay. So, between these two, if you are afraid of being able to communicate with people and English is your primary language, then Singapore is where you want to go. Okay. The ninth thing to compare these two cities on is on the where to stay. And by the way, I see a question. Let's Roam says, which is cheaper? I'm going to cover cheapness and stay. I'm going to cover cheapness and food, and then I'm going to give you an overall which one is cheaper. So it's coming. Okay. So where to stay? In Tokyo, location is everything. And the choice of neighborhood in Tokyo is a critical decision. In particular, as I mentioned earlier, I would recommend, if it's your first time, you stay in a hotel that is nearby one of the stations on the Yamanote Loop line. When I say near one of the stations, I mean within a 10-minute walk to one of the stations. That's what I mean by near. If you're looking at a hotel that offers a shuttle to the station, be afraid because the shuttles don't run in very often. It's just inconvenient. Find one that you can walk to a major station. Tokyo's hotels definitely range from, capsule hotels to international 7-star luxury hotels. You will not find many traditional Japanese style inns. If you're looking for that experience, you'll have to go to more historic cities like Kyoto, Kanazawa. You'll have to go to the mountain regions where there's onsen towns. But you will find the hotels in Tokyo to be very, very small. Very small. If you have been in Europe and you're like, hotels in Paris are small, they are smaller in Tokyo. They're very efficient with their space. But because of it, I will say it keeps the hotel prices reasonable. Hotel room prices, I find in Tokyo, are often half the price of what they are in other comparable big world cities. London, Paris, New York City. I'm talking about y'all. Like, you can get a comparable hotel in Tokyo for half the price of what you can in those other cities. I will say in the last couple of years with the tourism boom to Tokyo, those prices have gone up a bit. But if you just stay away from the big American chains, stay away from Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott. If you're looking for reasonable prices, look at the Japanese chain hotels and you'll find a lot more reasonable prices there. Okay. But if you're concerned about them speaking English, then stay in a Marriott, a Hyatt, or Hilton, because then what you're guaranteed is the staff is going to be quite proficient at English. Let's talk about Singapore and hotels in Singapore. Hotels in Singapore, while location is still important, it's probably not as critical to get like a hotel around one of the things on this line. As long as you are near an MRT someplace, you're pretty good about getting around the rest of Singapore. For your first time, I would recommend staying around Marina Bay. That's the body of water where the Merlion is, and the Marina Bay Sands. We'll see a picture of it later. This is a lookout from the JW Marriott Hotel where I stayed on my last trip to Singapore. If you're looking for some cheaper accommodations, consider Orchard Road, which is the major shopping part of Singapore. Hotels in Singapore generally cost more than they do in Tokyo. The rooms are also bigger. You know, Singapore has this interesting British influence on it, like more so like a more Western influence on Singapore, which I think leads to larger hotel rooms and larger accommodations and more grand and more opulent. I've found every hotel stay I've had in Singapore to be amazing. Then again, I do tend to stay at the JW Marriotts, the Marriotts, the Hyatts, and I've enjoyed every one of them that I've stayed in. Derek says this past June, 5-star hotel rates in Singapore were surprisingly much cheaper than 5-star hotels in Tokyo. Odd. That is a reversal of what it has been in previous years. West Coast Toys and Games says, I didn't realize until the stream that 7-star hotels were a thing. In the Middle East, they advertise their hotels as 7-star hotels. So there you go. Whether they're actually a thing or not, but there are certainly hotels that advertise them as that. Alyssa says she also stayed at the JW Marriott South Beach, where this picture came from, and also stayed at the St. Regis Singapore and Marina Bay Sands. JW Marriott wins. Crown Plaza Changi is also awesome. Thank you for that report. John says boat rides in Singapore. Yeah, there's cool boat rides that you can take through the kind of like rivers and canals that run through Singapore. Kathy says in Japan, the Mimaru hotels are great. They are, though, Mimaru hotels. We stayed at one on this past trip to Japan. They are like apartment hotels, so you can stay in kind of a traditional Japanese apartment, and the rates are very reasonable. Derek says, for Tokyo, definitely check the room size. Definitely check the room size. Like on every website for a hotel, they will tell you what the room dimensions are, and so yeah, don't book a 9 square meter room, you know. Killer Chronicles asks, is tipping your waiter forbidden in Tokyo? I tried to tip and it caused a scene. In most restaurants, it generally is. Yeah, tipping really not a thing in Tokyo. There are some maybe restaurants or cafes that have been opened by younger people that are open to tipping, but more established places that are open by more senior people generally do not accept tips. And Derek says, I find that in Tokyo, premium locations can come with a big upcharge, although it can still be worth it for ease of getting around. Okay. Green Organic says, which has better food? Let's talk about food now. The 10th area that I want to compare Tokyo and Singapore is on the food scene. Let's get in for our culinary showdown right now. Okay, and first we're going to talk about Tokyo. Tokyo is definitely a food paradise. Tokyo holds more Michelin stars than any other city on Earth. So if what you're looking for is ultra high level, ultra fine dining, Tokyo is going to have more of that than Singapore is going to have. And in Tokyo, I would say the food scene is kind of embodied by a specialized, relentless pursuit of a single dish. This restaurant that we went to in the Tsukiji neighborhood specializes in uni, sea urchin. That's it. That's it. They sell these sea urchin rice bowls, and that's what they sell. You'll find a lot of restaurants that are like that. What do they sell? They sell one or two things, and then everybody in that restaurant just obsesses about trying to make that the best thing ever. Now, a key experience of eating in Tokyo is definitely small restaurants. Some of the best restaurants are some of the smallest. Think like 8 or 10 tables, often seated at a bar like this, where you can see the chefs cooking and doing the action. Obviously, if it's sushi, they're not cooking, but they're slicing. You can see the work in progress. Now, I do want to talk about breakfast for a moment, because this is one where sometimes people stumble a little bit in Tokyo. If you are like, you gotta have your Western style breakfast with pancakes and eggs and omelets, it can be hard to find in Tokyo. Particularly if you're not staying at the big Western chain hotels. Like if you're staying at the more Japanese accommodations to save a little bit of money and you get a Japanese style breakfast, well, this is what your Japanese style breakfast could look like. Some soup, some rice, some fish over there, some tofu that's bubbling over here on the side. So if you really need to have a Western breakfast, make sure you're staying in a hotel that offers the Western breakfast. This was the A&A Intercontinental Hotel, and you could see they offer it was elaborate breakfast buffet, and I would best describe it as Westernish. Westernish is the best way to describe that. Now, definitely a popular place to get a lot of cheap eats. It's not all super expensive stuff. There's a lot of good cheap eats in Tokyo. Family Mart, 7-Eleven, Lawson Station, these convenience stores are staples of dining in Tokyo, and you'll find these convenience stores like every couple blocks. You can get breakfast, lunch, and dinner at these convenience stores and eat a pretty good meal for probably under $10 each. So definitely make sure to patronize the convenience stores. And if you're like, Chris, 7-Eleven, I've been to them in America and they're not very good. They're so much better in Japan. 7-Eleven is actually a Japanese-owned company, and the stores in Japan are amazing. Sigma Rex, thank you so much for your support. Sigma Rex says, thoughts of Japanese restaurants in Singapore. I mean, I think the Japanese restaurants in Japan are probably better, and I probably tend to not eat at a lot of Japanese restaurants in Singapore just because in Southern California, we have a lot of really great Japanese restaurants too. I would say for me in Singapore, the food that I'm really looking to get is the Chinese food, the Malay food, the Indian food, and I don't consume a lot of the Japanese food. I don't know, what are your thoughts on the Japanese food in Singapore, Sigma Rex? By the way, if somebody else has a thought of their Japanese food in Singapore, let me know. Now, if you wonder my thoughts on Japanese food in Waikiki in Oahu, I've got lots of thoughts on that because I do eat it there. Okay, so let's talk about Singapore now. Singapore really is this global melting pot, and the food scene is vibrant and delicious of this multicultural society. In Japan, much of the food that you're going to eat there is Japanese food. And while Tokyo is a big multicultural thing too, and you can find lots of non-Japanese food, primarily you're going to find Japanese food. In Singapore, lots of different varieties of food from lots of different cultures, and the heart and soul of the dining culture in Singapore is at the hawker center. What is a hawker center? Hawker centers are large open-air food courts that are home to dozens, if not hundreds, of food stalls. Each stall probably specializing in just a few dishes that have been passed down for generations. The Hawker Center has been recognized by UNESCO as a intangible cultural heritage of humanity in Singapore. And if you're going to Singapore, you must eat many meals in the Hawker Centers. It is required. It is required, I say. Now, the key dishes that you will find in Singapore, a few of them. One of them is chicken rice, and this originates as a Chinese dish from like a Hainanese chicken rice, although in Singapore, they've definitely given it their own take, and I personally prefer the Singapore variant of chicken rice to the actual more authentic Chinese variant of chicken rice. But in a hawker center, you go into this place, as I say, it's open air, but it's covered, so if you're eating there, you're not getting rained on, but there's no air conditioning. So it's hot, it's an experience. But a plate of chicken rice like this can be like 4 or 5 Singaporean dollars, like super cheap. Comes with a few different sauces, and I always like to get the lime juice. I just really like the lime juice while I am in Singapore. Oh, by the way, in the chat, Kathy says, love supporting your channel on your way to 500K. Kathy's been a channel member for 27 months. Thank you so much, Kathy. Okay, the laksa. I really love this soup. This is probably one of my favorite dishes when I go to Singapore, and this is one that originates from Malaysia. Laksa is a coconut-based spicy noodle soup that often has some fish cakes and some shrimps and some eggs, and usually has a couple different types of noodles that are in it. But it's one where Singapore has really taken its own take on laksa from Malaysia, and it is one that if I'm in Singapore for 5 days or something like that, I'm probably getting a couple servings of laksa. And I don't know, for some reason, the like hot and spicy just works in hot and humid Singapore. Now, the and noodles. There's lots of different noodles too. Okay, but I want to talk a little bit about the etiquette. Like both Japan and Singapore are like really big on etiquette. And something you will find unique in both places is like if you go to a food court and you want to save your seat, what do? You just put something down on the table, like put an umbrella down, and all of a sudden that table is yours. It's really strange. It's really strange the first time you go, and then you start to understand it. But both Tokyo and Singapore are very trustworthy places where you can leave something there. I mean, I personally wouldn't leave your wallet or your cell phone or things like that, but leave something of small value to claim the table. In both Tokyo and Singapore, cash is king. More places have been accepting digital currencies, but you'll probably want some cash with you. In Singapore, at these hawker centers, you will generally go to a stall, they'll give you a thing, they'll maybe give you some plates. It is required by law in Singapore for you to clean your table in a hawker center yourself, to like bus your table, to get rid of your dishes and put them where they go. If you don't, you can actually be fined. You can actually ticket you in the hawker center. So clean it yourself. Okay, if you want to know more about hawker centers, I've got a whole video all about hawker centers. I've got 2 videos about hawker centers. 1 about the culture of eating in hawker centers, and 2 about what the best hawker centers are in Singapore. So you can check those out after this video. If you're looking for Western breakfasts, they are definitely better in Singapore than they are in Asia. With the British influence on Singapore, the whole full English breakfast is definitely a big thing at most of the 5-star hotels in Singapore. Killer Chronicle says, Laksa, Chris? Come on, what about the calories? What about the calories, Killer Chronicles? I will say, though, one of the things about, like, portion sizes, in Singapore, like, these hawker center portion sizes, they're small. So, like, for me, I tend to eat, like, 5 or 6 meals a day in Singapore. You know, like, every few hours, I'm eating a different dish in the hawker center. Instead of, like, filling myself up with a lot of portions, I'm like, just every 2 hours I'll go and get something else. John says, what about 7 days in Singapore? I would totally do 7 days in Singapore, particularly if it's your first time. West Coast Gaming loves Hainanese chicken rice. Kathy also loves laksa. John loves Disney cruises, and Grenade Master wants a shout out. All right, there you go, Grenade Master. Loy says, Chris, do you ever plan to do a hotel tour and review of Marina Bay Sands the next time you travel to Singapore? It's on my list to do, Loy, so yes. Jonathan says, in Tokyo, if you want Western breakfast, look at this hotel, the Tobu Hotel. All right, thank you. Kid Blue Creation says, is there AC in the underground tunnels? Yes. Singapore is highly air-conditioned, like every indoor space in Singapore, other than the hawker centers and other than the public housing where a lot of people live, is air-conditioned. Tokyo, to a large extent, but not as much as Singapore. I would say Singapore is more air-conditioned than Tokyo is. And Points Traveler asks if I've done Universal. I have not done Universal in Singapore or Tokyo or Japan, because we live in Southern California. So Universal Studios Hollywood is just so close to us. That's why we haven't done those there. Okay. And Derek says the best hotel experience he's ever had is the Shangri-La Singapore. Okay, so let's talk about the cost of travel in these 2 places. This is comparison point number 11. And what I would say that, like, looking overall, which one is cheaper? I think in Tokyo, you can easily range where you spend. You can stay in more budget places. You can eat cheaper food. The transport's pretty cheap. I would say in Singapore, your primary expense in Singapore is going to be in the hotels. Probably in either place, probably in Tokyo or Singapore, your primary expense is going to be in the hotels. I think they are both pretty reasonably priced places to go. When I've priced out my trips to both places, I would say in Singapore, I tend to spend 20 to 30% more than I spend in Tokyo, and that is driven by the cost of the hotels and the cost of the attractions, like going to the Singapore Zoo or things like that, tend to be more in Singapore than they are in Tokyo. I also think flights to Singapore tend to cost more than flights to Tokyo, at least from Los Angeles. I have no base of reference for people coming from other places. I'm apparently the only one that finds hotels in Singapore to be more expensive. Point Traveler says I find them cheaper in Singapore than Tokyo. All right, well, to each their own. So that is my experience, but we have a few different data points. Okay. The 12th thing to compare these two places on is on things to do. What do you do? And I mean, you just go there and you just eat and stay in hotels. You do more than that. So what do you do when you go to Tokyo? Tokyo has a lot of great cultural attractions. There's a lot of old temples. There's modern pop culture. You can go to Harajuku for pop culture. You can go to Akihabara, Electric Town for anime and manga and gaming enthusiasts. Tokyo has a ton of unique, quirky, unforgettable experiences like cat cafes, hedgehog cafes, capybara cafes. The Team Lab attractions, Borderless and Planets, are out of this world. They seem like they come from another planet. Really unique things to do in Tokyo that you can't find any other place in the world. Now, while Tokyo is futuristic, I feel like Singapore feels even more futuristic as just the city is concerned, but it has this kind of like futuristic and colonial charm. That like British influence on Singapore does reign through. And so I feel like just one big amazing part of Singapore is like the urbanism, or this green urban place. The city's skyline is dominated by the architectural marvels, the Marina Bay Sands, the casino we talked about, the gardens by the bay, which has an amazing like biodome garden inside of it, cool cultural districts. You'll find a neat little India and a really neat Chinatown. So Singapore has this kind of cultural heritage neighborhoods that we've talked through. Universal Studios. Singapore has the world's best zoo. If you like zoos, check out the zoo in Singapore. There are 4 different parks at the zoo. There's the Singapore Zoo, there's the Singapore Night Safari, there's the Singapore River Safari, and there's now a bird park that moved. It's now there, and they're opening like I think an Africa park or something like that too. So you could easily spend days in Singapore. If you like to gamble, right now Tokyo doesn't have any casinos, but Singapore has 2 casinos, the Marina Bay Sands and also a Resorts World, just like in Las Vegas, in Singapore. Okay. The 13th area to compare these two, we've got one more after this, is safety, cleanliness, and etiquette. So both Tokyo and Singapore are safe, clean, polite cities to visit. In Tokyo, that safety, politeness, order is through culture. There's a strong, implicit social contract in the fabric of the society that instills that. And there's a police station every 3 blocks. I kid, but Tokyo has this network of kobans, which are these small police boxes. They're not like big police stations. They're like tiny police stations that house like 1 or 2 police officers, and they're spread all over the city. But in Tokyo, like etiquette is really paramount. Keeping one's voice down on public transport, refraining from eating or drinking while walking, and showing respect through gestures like bowing are all part of the experience in Tokyo. As a visitor, you'll certainly get a pass on a lot of those things, but those are part of the fabric of society in Tokyo. In Singapore, on the other hand, the order is through law. The safety and cleanliness are equally impressive, but they are definitely enforced by a legal framework with significant fines, expenses, and penalties if you do not adhere to the regulations. For example, you will walk into a store in Singapore and you will see this: shop theft is a crime. You will see pictures of people who have shoplifted up on the wall. At the hawker centers, there'll be signs on the table that say, you will be fined if you don't clean up your table. You will be fined in Singapore. You can be fined if you don't flush the toilet. And so because of that, there are some people who say they don't feel comfortable in Singapore because they feel like there is just too much law and order. Dung dung. All right, there we go. Hope I don't have to pay a license fee for the dung dung. Okay, but I just made it up. It came out of my mouth, so it's not the same. But it's probably out of tune. Probably out of tune. Okay. By the way, complete side note, the Curious Princess is really loving K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix right now. And when we were singing Golden in the car and I was singing to it, my 5-year-old daughter tells me, Papa, you're off key. You're off key. I'm off key. How do you even know what key is? That's impressive. Okay, there we go. All right, so 14th and final area to compare before we go to Q&A is what are some of the things you can do outside of the city? What are some of the day trips that you might be interested in taking? And so Tokyo, I mentioned, is this huge metropolitan area, and so there's tons to do in the city, outside the city, day trips from the city. Some of my favorite day trips from Tokyo, I'll give you 3 of them. One is Hakone. It is a mountainous region near Mount Fuji. It is famous for its natural hot springs. It has a really neat Hakone circle route that you take a cogwheel train to a ropeway to a boat, and it's just a really great way to see Hakone in a day. My second most favorite day trip from Tokyo is Nikko. Nikko is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that is home to some of Japan's most lavishly decorated shrines and temples. And finally, Kamakura. It is another town of shrines and temples, but they're much less lavishly decorated. It is most notably known for its temple with this outdoor bronze Buddha statue. This Buddha statue used to be in a building, but there was a big tsunami that came. It washed the building away, but this bronze Buddha statue remains. Day trips from, and it's easy to get around Tokyo for the day trips because they've got this amazing bullet train network to help get around. Definitely taking the bullet train is an experience in and of itself. Now, Singapore, in comparison, the day trips around Singapore, the reason why I put up this map is you'll probably be leaving the country if you're taking a day trip. You can visit Johor, the city just to the north in Malaysia. It's like the border city in Malaysia from Singapore. I have not been, but Singaporeans tend to go there for more affordable shopping and dining than in Singapore. It's also home to Legoland Malaysia. The reason why I've never been is I've just heard reports of really long border crossings. You can also take ferries to neighboring Indonesia across the way over here. I have also not done that, but I know people who have. And then Singapore also has a few outlying islands that you can take ferries to. Okay, so in conclusion, which one should you visit? What is the final verdict? Well, you should choose Tokyo if you are the cultural purist. You want to experience Japanese culture. You want to experience the history. You want to go into the Zen temple, and you have a desire to truly feel away from home in a foreign country, navigating social etiquette and discovering the deeply historic and complex society. Go to Tokyo if you're the urban explorer. You like big cities. And if you like food too, because it's pretty good in Tokyo. Choose Singapore. Here's the Marina Bay Sands, by the way, and here's a boat that's on one of the rivers. Choose Singapore if you are the cautious first timer, if you are worried about the language barrier, if you are worried about Japanese food and sushi, and you want a more Western type experience. And you go to Singapore, build your confidence in traveling to Asia, and then you can tackle Tokyo next. Go to Singapore if you are seeking a Asia-light family vacation. Tokyo does have a lot more stairs that you need to navigate and go deep to take the trains and things like that. If you've got little ones, there's not a lot of great places to put strollers. I would call Singapore a more family-friendly, all age-friendly destination, where you've got, you know, theme parks to interactive museums. By the way, we have taken the Curious Princess to Tokyo from the age of 2.5 or something a few times, and she's loved it. So I'm not to say to keep your kiddos away, but we've not taken the stroller with us to go to Tokyo because it's just really not functional. And go to Singapore if you are a comfort-seeking futurist. You like comfort, you like poshness, you also like the future. You want to stay in the Marina Bay Sands right there. Pretty comfortable, you get big rooms, and you can look down on this amazing metropolis of Singapore. But honestly, you shouldn't pick just one. You should visit both, but you just need to decide which one should you visit first. All right, that's my opinion. What's yours, and what questions do you have as we go to Q&A time?
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
Derek says, the flight to Singapore with a family can be brutal. I mean, it's a long trip from the USA, but hey, not everybody's from the USA. There's a lot of people that live closer to Singapore. Jason says, actually planning my first international trip to Japan next May for my 40th birthday. Been wanting to do it for 30 years. I hope you enjoy it, Jason. John says, the single traveler I am, Tokyo is my destination. Enjoy it, John. Greg says, would you recommend the winter day trip to Nagano from Tokyo? Absolutely. It's super easy to get there. You just get on the bullet train from Tokyo Station, and in like an hour and a half or something, you're in Nagano. Might be even less, but it's a pretty short trip. We've not done it in winter. We did it in May, and it was still snowing when we went to see the snow monkeys, so it was fun. Okay. Jonathan says, which subway do you prefer between the two? I mean, just for the act of riding on the subway, I prefer the Singapore subway because it's not as crowded, it's newer, and it's easier to navigate. That being said, I would consider myself a train enthusiast, so I enjoy the hustle and bustle of Shinjuku and Tokyo Station and all those things, but like Singapore is a more comfortable, easy place to ride. Yes, and Kathy points out it's only 9 hours to Singapore from Melbourne. It probably is longer to get to Tokyo, right, Kathy, for you? I don't know. I've never flown from Japan to Australia. Points Traveler says, would you recommend flying premium economy to either Singapore or Tokyo? Absolutely would. I've taken premium economy to and from Tokyo to Singapore. I've also taken business class on those routes, which is certainly amazing if you can swing it. Points Traveler, you got the points, so there you go. That's a good flight to use them on. Let's Rome says, did you go to Nagasaki? We have been to Nagasaki. We spent one night in Nagasaki when we were doing the Southern Isle of Kyushu. It's a cool, real Western feeling town because it's got a big Dutch influence in Nagasaki. Grant says, I still can't imagine being on a plane for 16 hours. You don't have to imagine it, Grant. You can buy a ticket and you can do it. Dining with Derek says, are there any new cities that you want to visit in Japan? I don't know if I'd say a new city, but we really want to revisit Hokkaido again. I've never been there for the snow festival, and so that's one of the ones that is on my list. And from Australia, apparently it's only a little bit longer to go to Japan, 9.5 hours, so thank you for that. Remy says, what's a tourist destination in Singapore that isn't a tourist trap that you would personally always visit? I always visit the Gardens by the Bay, and I don't consider it a tourist trap. I always also visit the Singapore Zoo, and I also don't consider it a tourist trap. There we go. And I almost also always visit the Mandalay, like, because I'm over at Gardens by the Bay, then the Marina Bay Sands kind of comes along with it. Okay. John says, my next trip back to Tokyo, 2 days, 2 days Shanghai for Shanghai Disneyland. Enjoy Shanghai Disneyland. Points Traveler says, have you ever stayed at one of the beach resorts? No, because I live in Southern California, and so the beaches are pretty great here. Also, the beaches in Singapore, you saw me take some pictures at Sentosa Island. The beaches in Singapore, in my opinion, is not a great beachy destination. Like, many of the beaches are man-made. There's a lot of shipping traffic around Singapore, so I don't go to Singapore to go to the beach. Jonathan says, have you eaten at a Food Republic before? I have eaten at many Food Republics. Food Republics is a brand of food courts. I've eaten at Food Republics in Singapore. I've eaten at Food Republics in Malaysia. I've eaten at Food Republics in Hong Kong. I love Food Republics. They're great. West Coast Toys and Gaming says, which place does your family prefer? By active number of times that we go, Tokyo. And the reason why, particularly my wife, OC Girl, does not enjoy the constant heat and humidity in Singapore, and so we find the weather in Tokyo as a singular thing to make the trip a lot nicer. But we absolutely enjoy both. Also, for us, as you've heard it, like, there is the time, you know, we're like, say it's 11 hours to Tokyo from LA and it's 16 hours to Singapore. Like, those 5 more hours are, they're a lot more hours when you're on a plane, particularly when you have a 5-year-old. Okay. Yes, and Elisa agrees. Go see the Snow Monkeys. Kana says, I've visited both. I love Tokyo more. Same expensive for Indonesian like me. Got a lot of votes for Tokyo. Kathy prefers Tokyo. And Loy says, have you tried the peanut pancakes in the hawker centers of Singapore? I've tried some pancakey thingies. I don't know if I've tried those in particular. I probably need to see a picture of them to be like, did you try these? But there we go. All right, let's go ahead and go to our giveaway.
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
All right, fellow explorers, as usual, I give away a Yellow Productions crew shirt to somebody watching the live stream who can answer one of my questions. And so my question for you, for that shirt shipped to you anywhere in the world, is going to be... Dun, 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 dun. I should have thought about this question beforehand. But this is one to be like, I know you can't guess it if Chris hasn't thought about it. Okay, my question for you is, what is my favorite noodle soup in Singapore? If you were the first person to put that in the chat, you'll win that Yellow Productions crew shirt shipped anywhere to you. If you want to buy one, you can do so at the Yellow Productions shop. The link is right here. You'll also find it in the description, shop.yellow-productions.com. And if you wonder when is the next live stream, you can figure that out by going over to update.yellow-productions.com, sign up for my email list, and I will email you every time I have scheduled a live stream.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Okay, we have a lot of people who gave the right answer, so I'm going to hit this button to filter it. And the first person who said Laksa was Lisa. Congratulations, Lisa. And by the way, I love your I love the thumbnail, Lisa. So, Lisa, congratulations. You get another Yellow Productions shirt. If you'd like a different design because you've already won one, let me know which one you want. Address, and I will get them headed right out to you. Send me an email, chris@yellow-productions.com. You'll find the email in the description of this video, and the shirt will be headed right your way. Well, fellow explorers, as usual, it has been a pleasure to hang out with y'all today. I'm going to finish my Singaporean Japanese green tea. And as usual, I won't say goodbye, because I'll see you in the next video. I should have used this finger so I can push this button and then roll the outro.